Welcome to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. We introduce you to the voices of community thought leaders and changemakers working on solutions facing our fellow community members, nonprofits, small businesses, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. Welcome to Voices of the Community. My name is George Coster. This is our co-production live show focused on arts and culture with KPCA and Petaluma Community Access. And I'm going to now turn over to my co-host, Lisa Demetrios, right?
You got it. Hi, my name is Lisa Demetrios, and I am president of the board here at the Petaluma Arts Center. I've also been on the exhibition committee the last 8 years or so, and president of the board the last 2 years. And we're excited to be hosting this here because, as you will hear from my colleagues, Petaluma is a really special place that has so many makers in the community, from Lucas to Pixar to photographers to Burning Man to painters, sculptors. There's so many makers in the community and actors and poets that this is an opportunity to share what we've learned in these last few years as things have pivoted and changed, and I can't wait to learn from my colleagues today.
Hello, my name is Melissa Abercrombie. I'm currently chair of the Petaluma Public Art Committee. The Petaluma Public Art Committee was founded, it came about because of the 2005 adoption of the Petaluma Public Art Ordinance. It's part of our implementing zoning ordinance as a community, and we have developed out of that a master plan of what we expect for the arts in our community as far as public art is concerned. I've served for 5 years, one as a liaison from the Planning Commission, and I guess now it's called the Recreation and Parks Commission. It used to be called the Recreation, Music, and Parks Commission. And so over that time, I've served at a period with no funding and at a time with funding. And so to understand the ordinance, in simple terms, it's a 1% fee that's applied to the development community for commercial development. It's any development that hits a trigger of over $500,000, and the fund can be paid in lieu, which goes into a fund that's managed by the city manager, and which we implement and manage and apply to future projects and current projects. And then it could also be used by the developer if they decide to choose that, but it has to be a forward-facing project that it's accessible by the public and that could be seen and have right-of-way to, that's safe and available. Right now, there's 7 members. They're provided by the city council. I'm one of them, obviously. Chris Smith is chair, or vice chair, and then we have 5 members that are selected either through the Recreation and Music and Parks Committee or through the Petaluma Arts Center. And so currently that is Ann Diggs. We all work together to define what our future holds, like if we want to have grant cycles in a year or if we're still using funds to administer previous grants. We also look towards projects that we want to do in the long-term future. And so we apply partnerships, paying attention to what funding is coming through the pipeline for other entities, and we try to coordinate our efforts to help extend the fund beyond the 1%. So thank you for this opportunity.
Hello, my name is Diane Dragoni, and I'm the executive director for Cinnabar Theater. Cinnabar Theater is in its 51st season. It is the premier and the only live theater here in Petaluma. The mission of Cinnabar Theater is to enhance the cultural fabric of the Bay Area, and we do that by performances, both musical and dramatic. And we also are committed to educating the youth so that we can produce future actors, artists, and audience members. At Cinnabar, we have 2 divisions. One is the professional and the young repertory. In the professional division, we do 5 main stage shows a year. It's an eclectic blend of drama, comedy, musicals, opera. And in the young repertory, we do 3 main stage shows a year, but we also do a very large amount of classes and programs for them. We do after-school programs. We do game nights in the evening. We do workshops. About 2 years ago, we decided that our young repertory programs have far exceeded what we were able to handle on the Hill. Petaluma, as you know, Cinnabar is located on the Hill in North Petaluma, and we had so many young rep kids and programs that we decided to get another space. We took a space at the Petaluma Outlet Mall in which we call the Cinnabar Theater studio space. It's very cool, and we use it for the kids, all their programs. What happened going into that area was that we found that we had new people discover who we were because we brought the program to the people, and people were walking by and seeing all of the nifty pictures we have up on the window and asking, what is this? And as a result of that, we opened our doors and gained a tremendous amount of new people. I do understand that being on the Hill is somewhat isolating because people, sometimes I run into people in the community that say, oh, where do you work? I say, I work at Cinnabar. And they say, oh, I have seen that sign. I never knew what was up that hill. So in so many respects, I think that we did such a great thing. And one of the reasons we think that the youth programs have become so extensive is because there's a changing demographic of people who are moving into Petaluma right now. There's a lot of young families who have children. And so Cinnabar wanted to answer the needs of that. The truth of the matter is, as a result of all this, we are finding ourselves in general, as an organization, in a somewhat transition because we're feeling the need to grow. Our theater only holds 100 seats, and we're in a situation where we are selling out all of our performances. So at the current, we have plans to move off the Hill. We have a lease on the Hill for another year, but when that comes, we're going to be moving to a larger venue so that we can accommodate and for the organization to grow in the capacity that we would like it to. So thank you for having me here today.
Hi, my name is Juliette Picorni. My husband and I produce West Side Stories Petaluma. It's going on its 15th year as of November. We also have produced the Wine Country Spoken Word Festival twice, both during the fires. And although we are not a nonprofit, which will maybe be an interesting part of the conversation, I did spend 30 years in the arts. So I was 15 years as a union stage manager in San Francisco, boots on the ground kind of experience. Worked at Pixar for many years. I actually worked at Cinnabar for a couple of years as their development director, and ended my arts career at Sonoma State for many, many years as the production and operations manager, overseeing 5 venues and about 400 events a year. My husband and I now own Once Upon a Slush, which is a small brick and mortar store here in Petaluma, which, may have some similar reflection of how things are going for funding and audiences as well when it comes to humans walking through the door. So it should be an interesting conversation. Thanks for having me.
To add a little bit more about the Petaluma Arts Center, this is our 15th year here at this beautiful location right next to the SMART train station. We have about 6 exhibits every year. We have about 2,500 visitors who actually come here, but even more visit us online and come see our exhibits and see what we're doing. Our goal is to put the S in arts and have all kinds of arts, not just sculpture and painting, but poetry, acting, singing, dancing, all kinds of things here in the years to come. So right now we also are doing some art exchange programs and that's more for our artist members. We've built this new category of artist members and finding out what people want to talk about, whether it's to critique the work or to see what everyone's doing in the community. So these are some of the ways that we're exploring here at this location. So it's both, as I said, and also VTS, visual thinking strategies. We've had almost over 1,000 students and also going to senior centers and taking it there. So that's part of what we'll be talking about today.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our wonderful guests.
So part of the context of creating the series of through Voices of the Community and our partners at BAVC Media and now our partners here at PCA and KPCA as well as KSFP is last year we did actually from April 2020 to January 2023, we did 105 episodes on how the pandemic has impacted nonprofits, small businesses, and local governments. And out of that, we interviewed about 25 arts organizations. And so that led us to produce this new series on how arts organizations are coming out of the pandemic with a new marketplace, if you will. So we just recently co-produced a series with Arts for a Better Bay Area, and some of the statistics that we've discovered is audiences are just not coming back to live shows, or not coming back to experience the arts the way that they used to. So part of our conversation with Petaluma Arts Center was what is an overarching topic that we could have as a community conversation about arts. And one of it was, how do community-based arts organizations secure sustainable funding? So it's for-profit, nonprofit. It's the same issue with small businesses. So much of the federal funding is now faded. So today, we'd really like to discuss just how each organization is working on coming back from the COVID-19 and how the COVID-19 pandemic has really impacted them financially. So I'm going to turn to you, Elisa.
Great, thank you. So I think when thinking about that question, I think it really becomes, how did the COVID-19 pandemic impact each of our organizations? And so I'd like to begin there, and I'd like to start at the far end with Juliet.
Okay, so when the pandemic hit, we had a decision to make. And that decision was, do we go to Zoom and do sort of virtual storytelling? There were other storytelling folk that did go towards and leaned in on virtual. I, for about 4 years, was the chairman for the Storytelling Association for California. So I represented all the storytelling groups throughout the state. There were many people that leaned in. Dave and I, because we are ourselves, we self-produce, which means we win some and lose some. So that's just a risk we take. But for us, we had to really go back to what mattered to us. And what mattered to us was humans together. And the idea of doing these Zoom conversations, especially during a time when so many people are on Zoom doing so many other things, we just felt like it wasn't part of who we were. And so we paused and we waited until we were able to return as a group. It was strange that our last date at Sonoma Portworks, which we had been there for 8 or 9 years, had just ended, and we were about to start our new space, which was the Hotel Petaluma in their ballroom. What ended up being sort of amazing during that was that when we did finally come back, the space, first of all, we are so grateful that they were supportive of storytelling and of us. They always have been, even during the Wine Country Spoken Word Festival. But because it was such a giant space, which high ceilings, that we kept the audience small, like about 80 people max, people could spread their chairs out all over the space, which was strangely conducive to the transition back into having humans together, because people were really worried. Everybody had masks. It was we were completely on that. But being able to tell people, don't worry, you can back off, you can sit by yourself. People just spread out, and we were able to continue and do storytelling and have the community slowly get back together. Since then, we've moved on to the Polyclass Community Theater, which is definitely more of a traditional theater space that has a stage and lights, which is pretty awesome. If you haven't come yet, you should come check it out. But definitely has sort of set seating. So very different. But that transition in the hotel really was a godsend for us to come back.
Well, when the pandemic started, we had to close, and that was pretty traumatic for us. But what we did was we immediately pivoted to producing small one character shows, and hired a professional videography team so that we could stream this. Our intent was that we wanted to continue to engage our audience and give as much as we could during this time that it was very difficult for us to give anything. So it was quite a unique experience for us to do that because we are live theater people. So here we were producing these shows that we were going to, and I mean, everything was the same because you still have to have a set, you still have to have costumes, you still have to have, a light designer and all that. The only difference is that you don't have an audience. You just have the videography team come in and film it, and then you sell tickets to streaming. Well, that was somewhat challenging because so many of our people were pretty challenged with how to actually receive it and watch it. And people were confused as to why can't I watch it on my TV? And I kind of feel that we became tech supporters at that time. I was on the phone every evening that there was a show having to explain where you should click and where you should go. And so it was quite a remarkable experience indeed. So we did 5 productions like that in the 18 months that we were closed. When we came back in September of that next year, we decided that we were going to do a hybrid model of live performance because we knew we weren't going to get a full house. We knew only 50% of our audience would come back. And we were also ticketing in such a way that we were leaving spaces between everybody so that it was a real, so if we hold 100 people, we were getting 50 people in there, but they were all spread out in the theater. And we were also videotaping so that we could stream. So for those people who refused to come back in, they could still get that. So that was challenging in its own sense because it was streaming the same nights that it was playing live. So we were really doing double duty, so that was and so we actually did the first 3 shows of a hybrid model, and then we stopped because we found that as more people were returning to the theater, less people were streaming, and the cost of actually videotaping it was quite high for us. And so we were finding that it was a financial challenge for us to keep doing that, so we stopped.
So things were a little different for us on the public art side. We didn't have a direct audience that we were normally interacting with anyway. It was kind of an after-the-fact appreciation. And so we had a couple of things going on at the time. We had a very contentious public art project that was really gathering a lot of energy from our community, especially when everybody was trapped indoors. It was really like bubbling up, and it was kind of defeated feeling as a team of volunteers. And I think the quarantine was a welcome time to kind of have a little introspective time to review what was the priority to us. Was it hearing the public? Was it adjusting how we look at projects? And lucky for us, a lot of projects get stuck and can take a long time because they have to go through all kinds of processes. They have to be reviewed through engineering, architects. There's all kinds of studies for soils testing. There's site reviews. So we can keep really busy with just a couple of projects on our plate. And so for us, we were able to kind of do some reflect. We had some changeover in our staff people throughout that time, 2 different staff liaisons from the city. And so it was kind of interesting. We developed a program with David Best where he was creating the River Arch. And so that, after many years of kind of stuck in planning, it was moving full steam ahead at the Van Beber here in Petaluma on Petaluma Boulevard. And so we were able to create an internship opportunity for a young welder to work with David Best. We were able to do these things that still felt like we were moving forward. So when the quarantine was lifted, we had this beautiful river arch to install. We started creating celebration around our installations. We were gifted the Women in Science mural that's currently at the Petaluma Library. That was a gift from 2 former Elsie Allen students who created the mural on panel boards, plywood, and they just said, they reached out to our staff person and said, we want to give you a gift. And it was all women scientists that they wanted to celebrate and STEM industries. And we were like, yes, let's accommodate this. So how we viewed public art started to shift. And then at the same time, we were seeing our local tensions rise. There were national tensions rising. We were seeing things really where people might have been too busy to notice. We were seeing social movements taking place, and we wanted to really facilitate that voice in our community. So really still in the quarantine, we produced the Black Lives Matter mural in front of the library. We were able to bring in 16 different artists and teams to work on that. We were trying vibrantly as we could to let the community know we're still here and we hear your voices and we want to produce art that reflects it. We also came to an understanding that, quite frankly, the Public Art Committee really looks a lot like me, and we need to start representing the community. We started talking about our small art grants, our community art grants. We knew we wanted to start going full steam ahead with the limited budget we have. Being tied to development, our budget is never going to be in the millions of dollars, because that would mean we're having projects in the hundreds of millions of dollars if it's 1%. And that's quite frankly not taking place here. So we have to think outside the box and accept gifts. We heard, I think it was towards the end of the quarantine, we were being gifted yet another project, which kind of blew my mind. Everybody kept saying, why don't you buy Revolution by Marco Cochran on First Street? It's the giant, 30-foot tall woman. And I was constantly sent images by her from the public, and everybody was like, please purchase her. Well, quite frankly, we don't have that kind of money. But somebody in the community decided that they wanted to share, and that was Rory Keller. She had purchased a piece of Marco's called Truth and Beauty. And Truth and Beauty is 17 feet tall, and it resides at her home. And Rory said, well, I see everybody loves Revolution, and I can only own this for so long, so I want to make a commitment to the community that that will be yours eventually. And so she made a promise within 10 years that we would receive this piece. And all of us were in awe, and we immediately worked to start having an agreement in place that we could facilitate that. So there were things happening that were outside of the public art sphere that we adapted to. We want to encourage the public. As we receive these gifts, I'd really love the public to know it. But oftentimes it's not something you hear unless you're watching a public art meeting. And I can't tell, but according to Zoom, we only ever had 1 or 2 members of the public that were actually logged in and there for comment. And that's kind of disappointing, because it represents like thousands of hours of volunteer work to get to this point. And so I hope that people re-engage, not just over hot button issues, but it did give us a chance to start looking elsewhere. It was during that time we were learning that Prop 68 was moving forward and there was going to be funding for parks. And so our ordinance is very specific. We can only place art on public spaces. We can't place it on private spaces. So when we get all those beautiful suggestions of where to place art, we don't own those locations. So we're kind of, I don't know how else to put it, but neutered. Like we want to, and we love those big, beautiful walls, but we have to work on what we own. And so another thing that happened is we had this small arts grant for, it was $25,000. And we, in the end, ended up applying it to 2 different artists for a total of $50,000, because we realized these cycles take a lot of work. We have to review all these plans, and by the end of it all, why not do 2 good ones instead of starting a whole cycle all over again if we really are inspired? So we chose a mural and a sculpture. And so the mural ended up being MJ Lawyer, Linda Lawyer, and Joshua Lawyer's project. It's making progress on the swim center. And we chose Delgado Calderon. It's a creative team from Southern California that's doing a sculpture for Kenilworth Junior High. Now, so we chose the artist, but we didn't at that time have locations. So the quarantine and coming out of that afforded us time to look everywhere. And in that search, we found that there weren't a lot of mural walls on the east side, because we were prioritizing less used locations that just didn't have the vibrancy that we wanted for our community. It felt like there's this huge investment in downtown, but screening those pearls of investment throughout our community need to become a high priority. And so in that look around, we saw the fire stations, the things that are publicly owned. And we started conversations with Jeff, I'm probably going to butcher his name, Solch. He's the fire chief for our community. And he said, wait a second, I'm going to be working on Station 2 and Station 3 on the east side. Give me a couple years and I will create space for you. And so as those conversations grew, we saw that the future of public art is actually really vibrant. It's just all comes down to a couple of things. It was recognizing that our community is beyond this certain demographic, making art that reflects that, bringing in community members and conversations that show us where finances and investment are already taking place, so we can say, do you want a kind of free, not exactly free, committee of volunteers who have a creative vision for our community that can implement that vision in productive ways that aren't directly funded from the Public Arts Fund. So if anybody out there has something they're investing in, we're a welcome body to help give our opinions and help show you where the past had laid a groundwork for those opportunities. Anyway, I'm sure that was quite a bit, but I just wanted to show that during the quiet times, we can incubate and we can come out explosively. And so that's what we're hoping to continue to have in the next few years as a gift to our community.
Isn't this pretty amazing what's happening in Petaluma? It's pretty incredible to not just hear about ideas, but really concrete ways to engage the community and what to do. And I so appreciate, I always call it making the invisible visible, and that's what you each are doing. And we also were so impacted when suddenly COVID hit. We had just opened a clay exhibit here, super excited to bring everybody in, and instead we're like closing the doors. And the way we looked at it is, how can we still build community through the arts, but in new ways, and basically go outside, beyond these walls. We took that fence out there where you just parked in front of and made it a talking fence. We posted because it was the election year, we wanted not just anyone to vote a certain way, but everyone to get out and vote. And so is doing that. We encourage people to create their front lawns as a venue to show art. We created a map so you could walk in your neighborhood to see what are people doing and making. And so that's where it was really a chance to celebrate all the makers, all the different ways, who themselves said they came up with some pretty creative ways, whether to use recycling materials or a painting that they only had during the day out on their front lawn. But it was really back to, I think each of us have spoken about, it's about people. This is all about people and how you bring people together to make things happen. And with those challenges of COVID, it was really that nimbleness was so important and adaptability. And so I felt like with the board, there's several of us here today, it was how do you still do the same thing, bring community through the arts, build it, but how do you do it differently? And so it was back to what each of us said. You had to reevaluate, you had to incubate, but you also had to do something. And that meant iterating. Not everything was perfect. We had to prototype some things. That's why, to me, it's so interesting to see how we both have guests who want to come, visitors who want to come in here, but also who want to visit us online and see that way. And so I just feel so fortunate that each one of us has volunteered our time because we care about this community, and each of us are giving. But it's also, I feel like I am so rewarded getting to do what I do. So.
You're listening to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. Voices of the Community is supported by a grant for the Zellerbach Family Foundation, whose arts and culture grants ensure vibrant work is created, new voices are celebrated, and artists and audiences inclusive of the Bay Area's diverse communities and cultures have opportunities to thrive. To find out more, go to zff.org. And by a grant from the Peaceful World Foundation, dedicated to fostering a culture of global peace through the promotion of hosted conversations and education. You can learn more at peacefulworldfoundation.org. Part of co-hosting of this live show at the Petaluma Arts Center was to also feature the amazing work of local artists exhibited at the center. Our backdrop for the live show was the wonderful exhibition, The Voice in the Hand, Book Arts and Printmaking. The exhibition was curated by Macy Chadwick, an artist in printmaking, letterpress, and book arts, as well as the founder and director of In Cahoots Residency and owner of In Cahoots Press. Let's find out more about the exhibition from Macy. George Coster here from Voices of the Community, and I'm here at Petaluma Community Arts Center, where we are producing an event on November 4th, and Macy is a local artist who's just put together an amazing exhibit. It's Macy Chadwick, right?
That's right.
So, Macy, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and then why you curated the exhibit around us?
Sure. So my name's Macy Chadwick. I'm a letterpress printer and a printmaker and a book artist. I live here in Petaluma. I was inspired to curate this show because I feel passionate about the community of printmaking and book arts, and I wanted to bring that into Petaluma. So there are about 6 or 7 local artists, local to the Bay Area. And then there are, the rest of the artists are from elsewhere. And so I think it's really great to bring artists in from outside the area, have them intermingle with artists in the area. The theme of the show is the voice in the hand. I really wanted to show the tactility of book arts, the importance of voice and concept and idea in book arts and printmaking. And I think it comes through in a lot of this work. There are 30 artists in the show, all artists I have worked with in the past, and artists that I know their work, and I knew that they would work together really well in this space.
And Macy, last question, because our series is really all about how artists like yourself are coming back from the pandemic. Could you share just maybe one of your favorite moments of how you've been working your way back from the pandemic itself in a new marketplace?
I think it's just become really important to get together as a community, and one of the things I really missed was working with artists in person, and so that I think it's become even more valuable to share studio space and have artists work together, and also to have shows open again, to have galleries open again, and events like this today where we had artists speaking in front of a live audience and now intermingling, looking at work, talking to each other, being in community.
Great. Thank you very much, Macy, for being on Voices of the Community.
Sure, thanks very much.
Let's get back to our panel discussion with Lisa, Melissa, Diane, and Juliet on how arts organizations are developing new business models and partnerships in response to the post-pandemic marketplace for both the arts and small businesses. Thank you. It's all really great responses. I'd like to turn to, so now we've heard basically how you're working your way through the pandemic. One of the things I'd love to hear from our guest today is, what are some of the unique or creative solutions you have deployed or found in the process of working your way through the last 3 years? Could be creative financing, could be co-ventures, co-productions with folks, different ways of market. So much. Diane, for example, talked about, the virtual space. And I think during the pandemic, it really provided the opportunity for live performance to really open that fourth wall and to provide an opportunity for an audience that doesn't even geographically, participate, for example, now be able to participate in your productions and art. So let's begin with Juliet.
Oh, me again. So for us, one of the things we did add pretty soon after we got back was we started a podcast. And what we do is we take all the storytellers, we break them up into the 5-minute stories, and you can search on any of your podcasting listening stations, West Side Stories Petaluma. We also we have now a live interview podcast that we do once a month at Brooks Note, talking about cross working together. So we're there and we interview past storytellers. We find that we've been recording these stories for 15 years. So we're pulling out stories from 15 years ago and playing them for the first time for the teller, who looks absolutely shocked at hearing their voices from 15 years ago. And then we ask more about the story. 5 minutes is not nearly enough. There's probably a lot of the story has been left out. So it's called Story Behind the Story. And they sort of go into the parts they weren't able to talk about. And then they are able to talk about their story process. We have been we started to interview national storytellers. So on that podcast, you'll hear Bill Epp, who was part of 2 of our Wine Country spoken word festivals. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. Yeah.
I'd like like to stay for a second because we were talking, I think it was yesterday on Zoom, just getting ready for our conversation, and you had mentioned your partnership with the local newspaper. So I thought that was another really unique co-production or cross-promotion.
So yeah, we're very fortunate. And again, having been representing the state of California for storytelling, when we partner with the National Storytelling Network, we really are one of I think the only storytelling event in the country that has a newspaper that supports us, and really came to us probably about 5 years ago and said, hey, what if you give us the recording and then we'll transcribe it and we'll put it in the paper every month? And how amazing is that? And what a community statement that is, to be able to take somebody from the community that gives a personal story and then has it in the written word verbatim, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, that's a really great collaboration. And we're very proud to be working with the Argus to being able to do that. So, and yeah, so then we also have Polyclass. That's our other partnership.
Well, I talked about the hybrid model that we did with the live streaming. We have small partnerships with schools with regard to our youth programs, because that's ongoing, and with Creative Sonoma, which is also an educational partner, excuse me, that we have. But with regard to the professional theater, we are very much interested in becoming partners with other organizations and businesses, because we really feel the need for that at the moment. Like, for example, I had a conversation with the Arts Center about a year ago about the possibility of using our lobby as a pop-up art exhibit, as an opportunity to combine visual art and live performance. You know, it's a dream I have of doing. I honestly don't think I could probably do it while we're still in the location we are, because it's very small, the lobby, but in the new theater that we get, we are definitely having as a mandate a large enough lobby that we would be able to do this with art organizations, you know, and we're also interested in co-productions with our performances, but we have not found the right situation yet, but it's something we're very open to.
So one of the things as a brick and mortar store that I just want to bring up as something to think about, if you start looking around right now in all of your local restaurants and local stores, everybody is doing additional events in their spaces, partly because humans aren't leaving their houses and coming out all the time to restaurants or to storefronts. So they're turning them into these pop-up events. So for a suggestion for a Cinnabar, you could be doing, play readings in any of these like local businesses would kill to have that sort of experience in their spaces as a way of pulling people in from different parts of town that maybe would never go up the hill or wouldn't go see a live theater production, don't really know what it is. But if they got to sit in on a sort of low expectation but interesting play reading with a conversation afterwards, I think you would get a big bang for your buck. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. We will follow up with that.
So again, our organization is a little different. Luckily the city of Petaluma enhanced their website, and so we, being part of that community of governance, we ended up having a great public art site. So if you go on it, you can see a map, you can learn about pipeline projects, you can learn about current projects, you can learn about the ordinance. So we really made that much more usable. There's factual information on there, so you don't have to rely on Nextdoor or your neighbor's opinion. So you can kind of actually learn what the solid facts are on an upcoming project. You can learn what the budget is. So that was really helpful for us. And again, we put emphasis on partnerships. So our community arts grant, which initially was going to be like a $10,000 grant cycle, and community entities could come forward and say what they'd like to work on, and we could potentially allocate $10,000 if that's what their ask was. We ended up funding 3, and one was of particular note. It was about bringing the scale of human life to the community again so that we can kind of start seeing our humanity in our everyday experiences. And I was really excited about this one, and it's coming forward soon. It's with Rhianna Frank, who's the Climate Action Manager for the City of Petaluma. And it's a partnership with the Climate Action Campaign and Petaluma's Transit Division. So they asked for $4,800 to be stipends for youth artists from local high schools so that they could create bus shelter art. So we took our very damaged bus shelters, and soon they will roll out that the glass will actually encase artwork by local students. And each of the students, I don't remember the exact amount, I think our money, the $4,800, was distributed through these students. So I think it's upwards of 8 projects that you will see rolled out along the major corridors in Petaluma. But we started thinking that our funds, these kind of projects, would help bring a major component of what we hope to do is to inspire space. And so that's something that the ordinance was created with the intention of. And I'm not sure how many people in the public are familiar that smart building principles originated in Petaluma. And a big part of smart principles is to have connection, where every 20, 25 feet, you have a point of reflection or interest that engages you to continue further. And we don't really have that all the time. Like right now, we see that it's starting to do that. We have this beautiful art center. We have the river park. Really, we're not too far from that. So when we look at public art as a way to inspire those spaces, it starts becoming something that's just part of the language of our community and not just public art. Because sometimes when you say public art, people feel like it's unapproachable, it's something that's esoteric, or it's something that's offensive, and they're very combative to the idea of it. But if we take spaces that are already deteriorated, sometimes people start realizing that art can change the entire vision of what that space is, the usability. It can change the humanity of it, where all of a sudden it's scaled in a way that you can walk in and feel like it's something that's embracing you, it's engaging you. And so that's something that came out of Fine Balance. Brian Goggins' piece with the bathtubs, it was going to be on Water Street. It was quite controversial. And we looked for spaces that could be visionary and that were totally unimaginative at this point. So through our lawn, it was 6 months of looking and vetting and working with Public Works and looking where resources were. And we ended up identifying the 8th Street Pocket Park, which is down at the end of the Foundry Wharf. And it's this terminus into the river with a couple of benches, sometimes a trash can, sometimes trash. You don't know what's going to be there, but it's definitely not as inviting as it could be. And we knew that the river park was going to be put in right across the street. And we looked in the visual corridor and saw that Shamrock had all these leggy pipes all over where they're processing and selling detritus materials and construction materials. And then there's also the line and twine building, where Petaluma had once made Fishman's line and twine and sold all these great materials to the military, to all types of businesses. And now it's a hotel, but what's still on it is the water tower, which isn't a water tower, it's just a platform with legs. And we saw that all of a sudden, like, the visual corridor could be completely changed by what we were seeing was something that people were really afraid of. And so it gave us time to start looking at activated space. I know this is kind of tangential, but there's a lot of opportunity when you're sitting still. There's a lot of ways to see things. And so luckily we had a visionary group that was thinking that way. And right now, a continuation of that is taking place, where we just prioritized the pedestrian bridge that goes over the 101. I'm not sure how many people out there actually use it or look at it, but it goes from Target over to the east side. And sometimes people will describe it as scary or dark or, something that's really not usable. Why would I want to use it? But yet it's a connection. It's like something that will bring you to shopping, that will bring you to the library, the swim center, the skate park, and soon the Kenilworth Park, which is a whole other thing I'll get to later. I got to keep it interesting. But it's somewhere that's not anything anybody's excited about. And we don't have a single protected pedestrian overpass in our community. And so collectively, we just decided that's the next spot. That's where we want change. That's where we want activation. And so it's changing and thinking.
I think it's great, because I think what we also going through at the Art Center was thinking about what the needs are of our community if we're wanting to build a community through the arts. And it's meeting people where they are, but it's also what you can introduce people to. And so basically, for me, the way I looked at it is everything became a palette that we could add to. Whether it was a fence, it was the sidewalk to draw panels, it was an invitation. It's sort of, I think, is when you do have time to reflect during COVID. But one thing that always seemed important to us was connecting to the schools. And so really figuring out with the VTS program, the visual thinking strategies that we could do here. Could we take some of the panels to schools? Could we take it to senior centers? And that's become very robust for us. And it's just very exciting to think about, like, art is changing people's lives, not just here, but across all these different ways that we're all talking about. But having that moment of reflection allowed us to realize we needed a better digital presence online. Not everyone would be able to get here. Not everyone wanted to get here, go outside their homes. And so what we really started to think about is what were some key components that we needed to address to make us more accessible to everybody. And so one of them, we figured out, okay, this is how much it's going to cost to do a website. I mean, a do-over, not an improvement, and a do-over built from the ground up. And then we found a donor to be able to raise and do that. And so really to care deeply about the community. I love having ideas, but what's so impressive to me, what we're hearing here today, is actually how to do them. Because it does take money. I mean, it does take money to have this be open. We are so fortunate to have Chris and Lance, who operations manager and also director of the membership and our volunteers. We have over 40 volunteers that allow us to do this. What we'd love to do is be open more. We're open on Fridays and Saturdays. I'd love to be open 5 days a week, but we aren't able to do that. But we're trying to figure out how we can grow into that. And as a special surprise, I really appreciate a former executive director has stepped up, and she's going to create a situation where we can be open on Sundays during the member show. It's kind of a thank you to our artist members, and the artist members are also going to be contributing artworks that are going to go for auction to help raise money for the Arts Center. So we're really thinking of things in different ways of how to work together and help each other really strive. The talent is here. It's with so many amazing makers in this community, but it's also, what does each person need? Is it a place to show the work? Is it a place on the website so people are aware of the work? And also to learn from each other. And so I'm really excited. We've just sent out a questionnaire, reaching out with a series to hear what should we be doing now? What should we be doing differently? And so we're starting to get the feedback, I think, just in the last week, and it's been formidable. Over 80 people have already emailed back, and it's like less than 2 or 3 days. So again, this is learning by doing, as each of us are. And I have to say, there are some not so wonderful moments, but when you keep your eye on what you are wanting to do, what you want that entity to strive for, that North Star, and sometimes there's 3 or 4 North Stars. I think it's the group that's making this happen. It's not just one person. And as you've seen, I've been jotting notes as I'm hearing things. That reminds me of this and this. This is what I'm hoping what you've created here today is a moment to see what we've each done and learn from. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Great stuff. So I'd like to turn, we have about another 15 minutes or so before we're opening up to questions and answers to the audience. But I'd love to hear things that you've discovered over these last 3 years that you could share with our audience here today, our listening audience, with each other, maybe solutions in funding or marketing or production. Anything that you would like to share with regards to what you've discovered and how you will use those going forward, or things that you would like to try. I think what the pandemic's really provided everyone is the opportunity to experiment. So much of it was, most people realized that the arts were closed down, but it was about a 90% unemployment for the arts and culture sector during the pandemic. So let's start with Melissa.
Thank you. I don't know. It's been a lot of discovery. I think we had some quiet time and some peace to think about what the future looks like, because the future's not necessarily us. And so I knew for us on public art, we had to start becoming more inspiring so that people would see us as something they needed and valued. So it wasn't something that people were afraid of. And so we really had to learn how to be adaptive to the funds we have, to the way the community responds. We had to recognize that we aren't the gatekeepers of the future. We're going to pass it off. So we have to do a good job of inspiring and incubating the next in line. And that's hard to do. We're seeing it through government. I mean, I get scared when people my age are considered young. And it's something I'm learning a lot. And I'm hoping that people my children's age or people younger have the confidence to take the reins. And that's not always the case. It's hard because we view ourselves as you have to be financially secure to give. And I will tell you that I'm not, and all the time. And I've been able to be incredibly generous, and it's a gift to myself to be able to be creative on the scale that this community allows us to be. And so volunteers who might feel intimidated by the amount they have to give could look at it as an investment in themselves, and you can scale it to what you can give. Like, we have members who attend meetings and give opinions, and we have members who give it all. And somewhere in the middle, we find the momentum to move forward. And so we rely heavily on that volunteerism, but we also need to start thinking about a future that's not tied to development necessarily. So we have to think, like, when Public Works is working on something, do they want to come and ask us how to do something that's totally different than the norm? Because we want to be those people. We'll have our hands raised. Right now we have money for safe streets, and there's initiatives towards that. And luckily they came to us and said, how do we have artists involved? How do we turn this into a pedestrian, bike-friendly space that isn't green stripes necessarily, but rainbow stripes and, artwork, all kinds of things that get you out of your car, get you out of your house, activate space, make you a community. Because I don't know if you guys have been watching the real estate market or things around us, but Petaluma is still kind of vibrant. There's a housing shortage, and people want to be here, and they don't want to be here because we have everything everybody else does. They want to be here because this is an inspiring space. Even studio spaces are left open to the public to see, like directly across the street. You will see, Kevin Clark's work, Marco Cochran's work. You'll see, gosh, it's everywhere. It's explosive. Like, you'll drive by Bertotti Landscaping, you'll see Michael Garlington's work. You will just see people throughout our community want to be here, want to be working, and young artists are coming here too. Like, we just had the Slough City opening of their collective behind Clavey on Petaluma Boulevard South. I mean, people see that there is an energy here that's worth tapping into, worth investing in, and so we are trying to help make that visible and continue the process for the future.
Well, as the post-pandemic, some of the things that we learned and things that we needed to implement, for example, the concept of being sick. We were not paying a lot of attention to that in the past, and now we are. Now, for example, in all of our casts, we always have a backup plan because somebody might get sick and we don't want to cancel the show as a result of that. Our ticketing policies, we had to loosen them up because people were sick and they couldn't come to a show. So normally most people who don't use their tickets, there would be a no refund or no exchange policy. We had to change that because we wanted to be sensitive to the fact that people were getting sick. The other thing is that with operations, we had to increase the improvement of the HVAC system and create more area spaces. Where we're at right now, it was this really tiny lobby. So what we did is we took another space and created that to be our ticket box office and our concession space, giving people a lot of room that they could walk outside and being conscious of that and sensitive to that. We were never that sensitive to that before. Everybody was in tight spaces all the time. We had to enact mask policies as everybody else did. We had to carry masks in the theater in case people needed that. From a marketing perspective, we became very aware that we have an aging population and that some of the our audience is diminishing. And we had to make a decision of how are we going to get new audience? What are we doing about new audience members? And so it's a question that we're toying with, of course. I'm sure every arts organization is doing that. But one of the things that we decided to do was, because we have a very vibrant young repertory division, we have parents of young rep kids that we said, well, gee, if their kid loves theater, why are they not also loving theater? Or how can we encourage them to love theater so that both parent and child has some kind of a little bond between them? So we sort of initiated a campaign of reaching out to young rep parents to encourage them with special promotional incentives to become subscribers to the theater. And it's a thought that we're going to have moving forward and continue with that. Zoom meetings is something that before the pandemic, we never really used Zoom. Now, Zoom meetings are a way that our board meets, for example. In other words, our board used to come, and it was always somewhat of a challenge for them. Now we're making it extremely convenient for that. We actually even do some of our designer meetings via Zoom. If, sometimes it's just not that necessary to come up to the theater to have a meeting. We could all conveniently do that through Zoom. So there have been a lot of things that we have enacted as a result of this pandemic.
So I'm going to change this a little bit, and I'm going to just speak from our storefront perspective. Again, because I think that the world has changed. And so we're really looking to expand our space into something else in the evenings, sort of like salons of different conversations. We're interested in creating a series of humanities classes, like 2 or 3 classes on a subject like philosophy or politics or AI or art. Plus, we are going to be adding some storytelling workshops also, a couple, 3 or 4, that would be a series. We just partnered with this amazing puzzle group called Mastermind Treasure Hunts, and we've created something called Once Upon a Hunt, and it's interactive. So now customers come in, they get their puzzle, they spend 20 minutes in the store, they walk around town and explore and discover, and then they come back and they're able to answer their questions, and then they get, of course, a slush when they're done. So we're really looking to try to find different ways to use even our storefront space, hoping to collaborate with other types of groups in a way to sort of expand, so people aren't always going to a formal experience, they're going to an informal experience, but are able to interact with each other in smaller groups. That's one of the ideas we're playing with.
These are so great. I think for me, I just love to go back to sort of the moment for us here at the Petaluma Arts Center, realizing when COVID was really hitting us in many ways, as all of us. It wasn't just us, it was everyone getting hit. And we really started to think that no one is in a void. Everyone is connected in different ways and how we can help each other. And there's also a level of discomfort. We'd had to do things differently. It wasn't easy. And we didn't even know if it was right what we were picking to do. And so I just think it's important to acknowledge that as we all grow and be able to do things sort of in different ways. And I think one thing that we found was that from our community, people could give in different ways of their time, of their money, of their experience, or their who they wanted to be a conduit to have us meet. And it was in interesting ways that happened. We had a whole writing postcards during the Get Out and Vote outside on the sidewalk that partnered with some of the postcard writing societies here in Petaluma. Never thought that would happen. And so a part of this all leads to, I think, the importance of all of our entities in their own ways have to be sustainable, or else they're not going to go on and people aren't going to want to take on what we took on. And so that's the new twist that I'm trying to think about is how do we become sustainable, and maybe we're scaling down or doing things differently. And I think for us at the Petaluma Arts Center is really thinking about those essentials. And really it's connecting to the schools, it's connecting to the artists in our communities, how we can help, how we can serve it better. And that's sort of, I think, what a lot of the nonprofits is how we are serving each other and the...
Don't forget about connecting with your local businesses as well, because they could really use it.
You're going exactly where I wanted to go with this, which is, I think it's something we didn't really explore as much. We do have some wonderful businesses that have supported us, but that is a huge part. And the way we noticed that was because so many people were moving during COVID. There's a whole new audience here that some still come back and visit us, but that's like another leg to stand on that we need to start building on and build that muscle. I agree.
We're right in the middle of town. We're in the heart of where people go. Being able to expose yourselves to people who are maybe not ever stepping into the arts center or Cinnabar, but then are stepping into their local, craft store or restaurant. It gives you a great opportunity, and for them, they would love to have the cross promotion.
It's the new hybrid.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, great discussions. We want to hear from you. So if you'd like to come up and ask a question, we'd love to get you on camera and audio. If you feel uncomfortable, you can ask the question. I will rephrase the question so that we capture it. So we'd love to open it up for any questions you might have. I'll just hold the mic and just tell everybody who you are and ask your question.
My name is Carol Barless, and I'm on the exhibition committee here at PAC. I was listening to each of you answer your various questions, and I was thinking about, wouldn't it be great to set up some sort of meeting between all of you, and maybe including business, on a quarterly basis, just to inform each other what you've got going? Because there might be some way that each of you can riff on the other, or to integrate something you're doing with the other. And I think that could be a really strong kind of creative process for our community.
Great question. Who would like to take that?
I want that. I would love to do a reading here with some of, maybe it's a preview, a sneak preview here. Also with you also bringing some of the stories here. Although we could also go to your storefront. I mean, what if there was a collaboration with the youth art having some of the art over there? I mean, that's what I've loved is with the internet, there's ways to show how to connect these pieces. And actually, we're talking about, for an upcoming exhibit, using the North Gallery here as an opportunity to show the projects that are happening at PPAC in January. So some of this cross-pollination is starting to happen, Carol, but I'm excited. There's always can be more.
Anyone else?
I would just sort of agree. I think that getting sort of commerce and arts together and sort of talking about small ways. I mean, I don't think people know the behind the scenes of a play reading and being able to hear it for the first time and what that looks like. That's cool. It doesn't have to have costumes or whatever. Like, people would really enjoy seeing that process. Similarly with art, even having the person go to, a local store and sit with 10 people and talk about their process. People are interested in process. It doesn't have to be the finished thing. It can be just examples, but talking about the process, all of that builds community.
Yeah, Lisa, I would really like to further this discussion. We can bring a small performance in here easily next season. Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Can I just, and that's all wonderful. The intention is great, but what about some action around setting up representatives from each of your organizations or yourselves or whatever, maybe on a quarterly basis, just to come together for an hour? This is what we're doing. Oh, you're doing that. Well, then maybe we can riff off of that and do this too with you.
Well, that's a good idea. We as a theater, we have a season and we have to set it in stone so that people can actually buy subscriptions and things like that. But we could do extra things. Like, for example, one of the things that I have been dying to start is like a sandbox series where we get new and innovative, creative things that are not really part of what we do on the main stage, but something extra. So we have never been able to do that just for space, but I think that this would be a perfect place for that.
Okay, so just to make sure we recapture that, your follow-up question was, get into action. What's the action? What are people going to do? And we just heard from Diane saying she was going to jump in. Anyone else? Melissa?
Well, we kind of have that established already with the Arts Center. We have a representative, Ann Diggs, who does provide feedback about what you guys are doing to us, but I would always welcome anybody from the public or private sector who's working on something to attend one of our meetings, reach out to our staff liaison, who is the public arts specialist, David Ward, and ask for that to be agendized. We'd love to hear what you're doing. We'd love to use it as a springboard for a way for us to be included. So there are some of those things are already happening, and just the beginning envisionings of what it might look like to partner with you guys in the other room. I would request a current artist rendering so you can see where a project was when it's in its application cycle, once it was reviewed, and maybe now that you can see the project, you can kind of see where that storyline is, because I think that helps tell about the process, which is also artful in itself that it ever gets done, especially in a bureaucratic environment. So, yeah.
And I think I would just add, I love that idea, but it's also how many human hours we have. And I think what we need is just more volunteers, more people from the community who want to pitch in and help on this. Many of us, myself included, have full-time jobs and families and already are giving a tremendous amount and happy to do so. But I just want more people to come in and do this. It's many hands will make that light work. But it's a lot about communication is what I'm finding. And it's like you said, maybe a quarterly meeting or something like that. But the follow through is really important, and to have that, to have enough time to do that. But certainly not adverse to that. It'd be great.
And Maggie, do you want to come up and ask a question?
Hello, I'm Maggie Parr. I'm on the board of the Petaluma Arts Center, and thank you all for coming. And my question is more about the nuts and bolts of the numbers, the budgets. We have no shortage of great ideas as passionate community members, and as you said, we all have families and full-time jobs, and so we have limited, I don't know how many board meetings we've sat through. We have so many great ideas, but just not enough time. So what's your feeling about how one, or your experience with how one gets an endowment? We don't have an endowment. We exist month to month. We have somewhat of a reserve. And I don't think we're unusual in a small town where we don't have a lot of concentrated wealth like in the larger cities. So what is your experience with or opinion about getting some sort of large fund that can sustain you over the long term?
Who would like to take that one? It's a really easy question, I'm sure.
It's not particularly relevant to what I do because we have the ordinance, but as I've stated, development isn't infinite. We run out of space, and we have an urban growth boundary and some priorities as a community to what that looks like. But I do see that we're going to have to start looking towards grant writing, focus on that to augment things. We have to perhaps re-envision our ordinance, and that's been a conversation for a while, where we can have private partnerships. If somebody feels inspired to take on an art project like we saw with the Magnificent mural it's on Petaluma Boulevard. That was actually Sean Paul, who was one of the founders of the River Park. We were dropping our kids off at school, and he said, "Did you ever hear about the mural that Magda and Amanda Lynn wanted to do?" And I was like, "Who are they and what are they talking? Like, what's going on?" And so he gave me their contact. I called them. It was like a very human exchange. And they said, "Yeah, help us make this mural." They had already done the hard work and talked to Jeff Tomasini at Rex Hardware and said, "We have a site. Nobody's building the hotel yet. Like, it's visible to the public. We just need to figure out how to get through the city and the permit process." And so we said, "We want to be that. Let's do that. This is a win-win." And so they did it from the goodness of their heart. And people from the community donated money, and we found a way to do it. But it's interesting because moving forward, our fund could stall out. We could have another recession. We could lose out on things. But I think if we've made ourselves indispensable, then that kind of changes the priority of the community. And if we have an ordinance that allows for that, that will be very helpful to us.
Sorry, I was just going to weigh in when you were done. Carry on.
Be my guest.
Oh, okay. So not being currently in a nonprofit right now, but this would be my input, having done development in the past. And having worked at Sonoma State, we dealt with a lot of donors and such. This is just my opinion. First of all, like getting to know everybody who gives, even if it's $2 or $5, that sounds like really hard to do, but you don't know what they care about until you get to know them. So getting to know what people care about and what they like is first and foremost for them to want to be engaged. Once you get to know those people that are giving that money, then you're going to find out sort of what matters most to them. Lean on folks for legacy gifts and maybe use your legacy program as a way of building an endowment, and especially if that's how you phrase it. By saying legacy gifts go into an endowment, you might be able to get some better support. But I do think first and foremost, it's connecting to your people who like you already, and maybe you're only giving, a couple $100s a year, but find out what it is what matters to them most. Then they're willing to sort of express it, and then that's the way in to figure out how to better serve the community in the arts. That's my opinion.
And I think for us here at Petaluma Arts Center, we have also tried to go for grants and really think about which grants could be applied for the 6 shows that we do each year, as well as the art exchange and the idea lounges and the VTS programming. And so trying to tailor that part, and even if we don't get it, learn from that, how we can do it better the next time. And so also we are thinking about more publicity and having more presence of advertising about what we're doing, which is really exciting too. And so it's multifaceted. And so the biggest thing for us is prioritizing the ideas. We'd love to do everything. There's no chance any way that we can do it. And so how can we almost create a system of where things can be added to in a very complementary way. But it does get back to all these partnerships that we're all talking about today are really critical in getting to know each other. And that takes a lot of time. What is that expression that everything moves at the speed of trust? And that's what it really is on this.
Thank you. Another question from the audience? Oh, wait, Melissa has a point.
Sorry, I just have a quick addendum. I just wanted to also clarify that we're all talking about numbers and financing, and then we're talking about volunteers, but there's this nexus where that in-kind gift of yourself and your social media and your contacts and your ideas, those are equally valuable. And so when we can take the numbers sometimes out of it and view the presence of someone's ability as a gift, that has tremendous value. And when we find success together, it's something that people want to continue with.
And it can be more.
Yeah, it could be more. It can grow.
All right. Don't forget to tell everybody who you are.
Hi. Thanks, everyone. I'm Lisa Lightman. I'm on the board of the Petaluma Arts Center. I'm so impressed with everything that's happening, and I'm thinking about the words of partnership and communication. And I'm wondering if it's like, let's partner with Sonoma Tourism and get people to see what's going on here, to come here, get the numbers, get the doors open. So I'm wondering if that's ever happened before.
Julia?
So, strangely, again, my little brick and mortar keeps coming up, but I actually went to the Sonoma County Tourism Conference this year. I'm pretty sure I was the only little baby store that was there. Everybody else is sort of bigger representatives of larger entities. Very interesting, though, and they're extremely open to wanting to find ways to get connected to each area. And in fact, I sort of wiggled my way to the front, and they're going to be doing one of their get to know Petaluma businesses at Once Upon a Slush because I was there. So I think that you really should, it was quite an eye opener of all the things they can offer, all the ways you can get on their websites, ways you can show videos. They'll put them out there for you, and they have a much broader audience. So definitely an untapped resource, in my opinion, for myself, right? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, West Side Stories is doing pretty good, but boy, wouldn't it be great to get us out there in the county so that everybody knows that we exist. So that's sort of on my list of things to do. But I do think they're very, very willing and interested in exploring everybody's little area of Sonoma.
Thank you, Juliet. Anyone else on the panel? Any other questions in the audience? Please don't be shy. All right, so I'm going to kind of wrap up the show by asking each guest to share how you can engage with them, websites, information, special events you might have coming up this fourth quarter. So Juliet, we'll start with you.
Me again. So we have our Grand Slam. West Side Stories does, 12 shows a year. The first 11, the audience self-votes for their favorite, I won't say the winner, but their favorite storyteller of the night. We vote by technology. We're the only storytelling event that I know of that does a slam that votes with your cell phone. So we have our Grand Slam at the Mystic, Tuesday, December 12th. We still have tickets. We would love to see you. It's all the favorites of the year. Super fun. And then definitely go onto our website, which is West Side Stories Petaluma. We already have tickets on sale for January and February, but definitely check us out. Don't forget to look up our podcast. It's so fun. It's 5-minute stories. You'll love it. And then, of course, come by for a slush. Sorry, I had a little plug for Once Upon a Slush one more time. Thanks.
Yes, and for Cinnabar, next week we open up our Young Rep show of Addams Family. Unfortunately or fortunately, all 10 shows are completely sold out. But our next professional show opens up January 5th, which is The Last 5 Years. It's a musical. And New Year's Eve, we're doing a wonderful concert with the music of Billie Holiday with Stella Heath. And the good thing about coming to Cinnabar for New Year's Eve is the show starts at 7:30. At 9 p.m., we ring in the New Year New York style. And you're back home by 9:30. So it's not an all-night thing. We are, like I mentioned earlier, we are in a transition. We're going to be moving off of the Hill. We have not been able to announce our new location yet, but we do know that next year, starting in September of 2024 to June of 2025, Cinnabar is going to be on the road, and we are going to be performing in different venues. For example, we are going to be doing a performance at the Sonoma State University at Person Theater. We're going to be doing one of our performances at the Santa Rosa Junior College Ellis Auditorium. We're going to do something at the Poly Class. We're going to do something, we are going to be on the road. So it's going to be an exciting time for us because we get to tell our story out in the community. And I really like doing that because we are discovering new people to our organization. And that's kind of fun. And then after that, in 2025, we will be in our new home. And I'm sorry I can't announce it right now because we have not officially signed the lease and the board would like to roll it out in a certain way. But stick with us. I will keep you posted, I promise. And thank you for having me today.
So you can find out more about us on the cityofpetaluma.gov webpage. You can go there and then select to go to the public art page. Ways you can get involved. There's big ways and little ways. You can send us your ideas, send us what you don't like, but hopefully what you do like, because we mainly get the former. No, we mainly get the former, but it helps inform our decisions. We listen to you. We may not reply to everything because we would never see our families if we did at certain times of the year. But we are listening, and we are part of your community. So we're definitely working for you and not against you. And hopefully there's a compromise there. And then also in the big ways is you can apply to be on the Public Art Committee when there's an open ability to join planning, Public Art, Airport Commission. Volunteer. Over the years, I've done about 16 years of volunteering on a variety of bodies, and it's really informed how I approach public art. I know that there's policy that can work together. And I think when you're on these boards, like some of them are so much fun, like pedestrian bike advisory. You get to see projects before the planning commission does. You can talk about usability. All of these things in a lot of ways are artistic. You influence how we see our community, how we use it, how we touch it. And so it's opportunity. And especially, idle hands, but creative minds can combat that. And I think if we all work together, we'll get there. So thank you.
There's many ways you can join or become a member of the Petaluma Arts Center. You can come to the members show where we're going to have an auction towards the end of the year where you can buy the art, which doesn't just support us, but it supports the artists here in our community. We also have a little boutique here, Art to Go, which is also art from our community, from our artist memberships. And also, as we've mentioned here today, think about the time that you could give or also ideas that you might have. Join our committees. Consider joining our board. And because it's not one size fit all, as I think you've learned today, it's many ways of being creative to solve these problems that we have. And also, I just want to do a shout out and be grateful for the Zellerbach Foundation, and I think the Peaceful World Foundation. We wouldn't be here right now without them. And we're so fortunate that they have the foresight to create opportunities of making these voices heard. So thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. We're going to wrap up the show. I want to thank all of my wonderful guests, and I hope you visit their shops, buy a slushie. Evidently, they're the best in town. Go to see live theater, do public art, come and see wonderful exhibits. A special thanks from my perspective to Rob at KPCA. It's been really wonderful. Maggie, who you heard a question from Petaluma Arts Center. Heidi at Peaceful World Foundation made this possible, along with Margot over at Zellerbach. And a special thanks to my crew here in the background, Andy, Clay, Javon, and Eric, all making the magic happen. And thanks again for showing up. Where there's food and beverage, we want you to network. The whole goal of bringing people together was to chat and chew and introduce yourselves to each other. Okay? Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Voices of the Community. You've been listening and watching Petaluma-based arts leaders, Melissa Abercrombie, the chair of the Petaluma Public Art Committee, Diane Dragoni, the executive director of the Cinnabar Theater, and Juliette Picorni, the co-founder of West Side Stories Petaluma, along with her co-hosts, Lisa Demetrius, the president of the board of directors for the Petaluma Arts Center. To find out more information about our guests and the respective organizations, programs, services, how to volunteer, and to make a donation, please go to voicesofthecommunity.com and click on the link to the Arts and Culture series and episode 6. Today's episode was made possible through our co-production partnership with Petaluma Arts Center, KPCA 103.3 FM, and Petaluma Community TV, along with our amazing technical crew, the audio and video wizard and our associate producer, Eric Estrada, and our co-production partner, BAVC Media, and their wonderful staff, Paula Argoni, Andy Konami, and Javon Giles. And the graphics magic was made possible by Casey Nance from Citron Studios. We also want to thank our broadcast partners, KSFP, LPFM 102.5 FM, KPCA LPFM 103.3 FM, Petaluma Community TV, and BAVC Media. Voices of the Community is supported by a grant from the Zellerbach Family Foundation, whose arts and culture grants ensure vibrant work is created, new voices are celebrated, and artists and audiences inclusive of the Bay Area's diverse communities and cultures have opportunities to thrive. To find out more, go to zff.org and buy a grant from the Peaceful World Foundation, dedicated to fostering a culture of global peace through the promotion of hosted conversations and education. You can learn more at peacefulworldfoundation.org. Take us along on your next walk, Work out or drive by subscribing to Voices of the Community on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you've been enjoying the show, please leave us a rating and review on the podcast platform of your choice. To watch past and future episodes of Voices of the Community, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to youtube.com/GeoCoster. We'd love to hear from you with feedback and show ideas, so send us an email to george@georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster from San Francisco, and thank you for listening and watching today's episode.